I was born free in the land now called Nigeria. My early days were filled with the joys of my family, my culture, and the spirit of freedom. But in one swift moment, everything changed. This is my story, one of survival, of suffering, and of the dark side of what history calls the Columbian Exchange. I was torn from my home, shackled, and thrust into a nightmare that I could not escape. The exchange, they said, brought new crops and wealth to Europe. It brought tobacco, sugar, and cotton to the world's tables. But what did it bring for us? Suffering. I was one of millions forced across the ocean in chains. I was an African slave, traded like goods and bartered like spices. The stench below deck was unbearable. We were packed in like cargo with no air and no room. But the cries of my people filled the space with a sorrow I had never known. They called this the Middle Passage, but for us, it was a voyage of death. When we arrived in the West Indies, I was sold. I was no longer a person, I was property. So the sun beat down on us as we worked in the fields, harvesting the very crops that Europe craved. But even in this suffering, I held on to hope. I learned to read and write, and I began to dream of freedom, of one day telling my story. Today, people speak of the Columbian Exchange as a time of growth and trade, and yet we cannot forget the lives it destroyed. My story is but one of many, but it reminds us that history is not just about the riches it creates. It's about the humanity it can destroy. My name is Olaudah Equiano, and this is my story.